Hey guys, Tyler here. Over the past few years, I've seen an increasing number of people within the Star Trek community bring up various in-universe events, some that occurred years ago and others due to occur in just a few years' time, and compare them to and match with developments from our real world. All of this is fun and good, but there's a portion of the fandom that does seem to take this exercise in world building a little too seriously, striving to reconcile events from two separate realities in earnest as if it were a single timeline. Like I've said, it's always been inevitable that Star Trek's portrayal of the late 20th and early 21st centuries would stray away from reality, and this will only continue, should I perhaps say get worse, as time progresses. But at what point did the fictional history of Star Trek actually begin? Let's get started. Before we begin, a little thought experiment. Okay, imagine this. What if this video was sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends? You'd get to hear all about Raid's awesome collection of over 700 unique champions, super detailed tactical RPG battle system, incredible graphics, and intense combination of PvE and PvP content. One of Raid's toughest bosses is a Hydra, and each head is a complete boss battle unto itself. The head of Blight leeches you and protects itself with a poison cloud. The only way to stop the head of Torment is by hiding your champions with Veil buffs, but the head of Mischief wants all your buffs for itself. The head of Wrath is a mega damage dealer, while the head of Decay turns your team's healing power against itself. And then there's the head of Suffering, which causes your champions to take damage whenever you attack it. New players can get their hands on Stag Knight, one of the best epic champions around, plus a skin for Stag Knight designed by JonTron. Just use promo code JTSkin before October 7th. Even if you aren't new, you can still get Stag Knight and the skin through an in-game event. Do you want a free legendary champion? Silly question. Of course you do. Check out a brand new Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the mischievous Monkey King, coming as a free legendary champion. Just log into Raid on 7 different days between August 22nd and October 23rd to get your hands on him. With all this and more coming to Raid, if you aren't playing yet, what are you waiting for? Use the link in my description or scan the QR code to get insane bonuses, like Epic Champion Drake and other useful things. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name OrangeRiver. And if you're fast enough, you can join my clan. Big thanks to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now, back to Point of Divergence. We've seen Starfleet officers time travel to our present on quite a few occasions, usually to prevent the prime timeline from being disrupted. On all these occasions, the protagonists are successful in their escapades, and the prime timeline did not consequentially get corrupted or contaminated, though sometimes their efforts did take a toll. One major deviation from our real history is the version of 1968 depicted in the original series episode, Assignment Earth. As Mr. Spock himself puts it,
"There will be an important assassination today, an equally dangerous government coup in Asia, and this could be highly critical. The launching of an orbital nuclear warhead platform by the United States, countering a similar launch by other powers."
There was indeed an important assassination on April 4th, 1968, that of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which also coincidentally happened on the same day as the launch of the unmanned Apollo 6 Saturn V rocket, which, amazingly enough, also suffered a serious mishap and went off course. The details of the mishap greatly differ from Assignment Earth, but Kirk comments that the real events were never revealed to the public until centuries later. It's also worth noting that McKinley Air Force Base featured in the episode is also fictitious. Regardless, just a couple years earlier, something much more profound occurred that truly separates the Star Trek timeline from ours. Star Trek premiered on TV. Specifically, The Man Trap was first broadcast on Canada's CTV network on September 6, 1966, 2 days before it premiered in the United States. Obviously, in the Star Trek universe, there is no media franchise called Star Trek. So that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to support me on Patreon and buy some items from my merch store. Okay, I'm just kidding. We are not quite done yet. Gene Roddenberry actually first conceived and started to develop Star Trek in 1964, after the cancellation of his first ever produced television program, The Lieutenant, which ran from late 1963 to early 1964. Question: did Gene exist in the Star Trek universe? And if so, what did he do? Did he remain an airplane pilot? Did he continue to work as a police officer? Or did he, in fact, still go on to become a TV producer and showrunner? Clearly, he was doing something to occupy his time during the mid to late 1960s. Actually, perhaps he did create a space-based sci-fi show in the late 60s with some of his same creative staff by his side. But the program would be dissimilar in some ways from our Star Trek, possibly looking like Galaxy Quest, or even the Space Fleet from Black Mirror's excellent Season 4 episode USS Callister. Either way, it would go on to inspire lots of folks in the Trek universe to aspire to a more hopeful future, and even enter the sciences, just like in real life. In the Enterprise episode Carbon Creek, that takes place mostly in 1957 and 1958, we witness another case of alternate history when Tamir, T'Pol's great-grandmother, takes a Vulcan-invented hook-and-loop fastener, later colloquially known as Velcro, and sells it to a businessman from Pittsburgh. She does use the money for a higher cause, just saying. In our reality, what would later become known as Velcro was first conceived in 1941 by Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral. Over the next decade, he perfected the mechanism and finally submitted a patent in 1951, which was granted 4 years later. More granted patents quickly followed in numerous countries around the world, including the United States in Manchester, New Hampshire, in 1957. Also worth mentioning that the Vulcan who decides to stay on Earth at the end of the episode is named Mestral. You know, a nod to him from the writers. You guys still there? The DS9 episode Little Green Men is largely set in the year 1947 and presents an entertaining take on the Roswell UFO incident. In it, we see the three Ferengi, Quark, Rom, and Nog, and the changeling Odo crash land in New Mexico in the late 40s, due to their shuttle being sabotaged and traveling through time. These four aliens thus become stand-ins for the famous urban legend involving Walker Air Force Base and the crash site of an alleged extraterrestrial flying saucer near the village of Corona. In actuality, the crashed object was a nuclear test surveillance balloon from the then top-secret Project Mogul, which was declassified in 1994 before the episode aired. Little Green Men thus postulates that the balloon explanation was a cover-up and depicts unofficial first contact between humans and Ferengi. But is this the point of divergence that we're looking for? I don't think so. I'm convinced that we need to go even deeper into the past, namely the late 1930s. In 2371, deep within the Delta Quadrant, the USS Voyager's crew discovers a cryogenically frozen group of 8 humans who had been abducted from Earth 434 years prior, along with about 300 others, by a highly advanced alien species called the Briori. Among the lot were the famous records-setting aviation pioneer Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan, both of whom, in real life, inexplicably disappeared over the Central Pacific Ocean near Howland Island during their circumnavigational flight of the globe on July 2nd, 1937. For some 81 years, the fate of Earhart's, Noonan's, and their airplanes had been shrouded in mystery, which, given Earhart's achievements and popularity, gave rise to various theories over the decades, probably including like how Don Lemon thought that Malaysian airplane went through a black hole. However, there had been found unassigned human bones on Nikumaroro, a remote island in the Western Pacific, in 1940. It wasn't until a 2018 study that people began to suspect they could possibly belong to Earhart. That's when researcher Richard Jantz re-examined their measurements and found they closely matched those of the long-missing pilot. Further DNA testing may more accurately determine whether the skeletal remains in question truly are those of Amelia Earhart, and perhaps shed some light on what happened to the trailblazing aviator after she had seemingly vanished. Well, I'd bet that in our reality, she certainly wasn't hauled by aliens in stasis across the galaxy. Okay, so is this it? Or is there still any event preceding 1937 in Star Trek's timeline that does not match our historical records? The answer is yes. Adventures of Captain Proton was a multimedia science fiction franchise most likely originating in the early 1930s in the Star Trek universe. It consisted of pulp magazine stories, prose novels, radio plays, and movie serials, such as The Bride of Chaotica, later found in the NX-01's film library. The Captain Proton franchise, of course, does not exist in our world, but it was clearly inspired inspired by the likes of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon from the late 20s and early 30s. The good old days when one could open just one set of doors and step right into the vacuum of space. No need for airlocks or decompression chambers or any of that futuristic tech. Too bad the laws of physics have changed so much since these jolly simpler times. Okay, obviously there's other prior events in Star Trek that are out of line with real history, especially various pre-First Contact encounters with alien species. But the further into the past you go, it gets exponentially harder to ascertain whether any of these occurrences truly had a lasting impact on broader human society. That would skew the Trek timeline from ours. Guinan's visit to 1890s Earth in Time's Arrow seems to have caused minimal butterflies. We can probably assume the same with the Skagarans abducting thousands of humans from remote areas of the American West in the 1860s. We can also probably assume the same as well for various Native American tribes, including the Navajo, Mohican, and Delaware, who had been threatened with extinction towards the end of the 18th century due to European settlers. In Trek, select members of these peoples were apparently secretly transplanted by the preservers onto the terraformed planet Amarind, in an episode of the original series that has not aged as gracefully as a lot of others. The Plutonians of Sandara, who quietly resided in ancient Greece for a few centuries, also probably caused minimal butterflies, much like Pelia and other Lanthanites who lived on Earth for thousands of years unnoticed. Earlier visits from the likes of the Greek gods, Kukulkan, and the Sky Spirits had considerably more profound an influence on the developments of certain human civilizations and prehistoric societies. But that's so long ago that we're starting to enter the realm of myths and legends. Therefore, I currently find the year of 1930 to be our best bet for a noticeable point of divergence for Star Trek's timeline from our own. But what do you think? Let me know down below. This video was written by my script editor Sabraxis, who, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know where he gets all of his ideas from.
You sit for hours each day in front of this idiotic device.
I'm doing research.
Actually, he was inspired by Greg Cox's 2-volume novel, The Eugenics Wars, The Rise and Fall of Khan Noonien Singh. The books strive to explain the eugenics wars as a secret history, hidden behind natural disasters, deadly industrial accidents, assassinations of politicians, or smaller armed conflicts interlinked in a fairly contrived and convoluted fashion with a fictional overarching story underlying everything. This is more or less the exact scenario you'll find in the aforementioned novel, and in an interview Greg Cox stated, the passing of the 1990s in reality required a reinterpretation of the eugenics wars that were originally said to take place in the same decade. Again, it's hard for me to agree that something like this was ever required, since by the 1990s, Star Trek already operated as a separate timeline. What is much more troubling, however, is that behind all the deaths resulting from the exploited real-life incidents and catastrophes are real people, not fictional characters. And this is not like writing about partly fictionalized battles or murders from the 15th century or 3000 BC. Since all of this stuff happened between 25 to 50 years ago, virtually all those deceased people are still likely remembered and dearly missed by their loved ones. Personally, I find this to be largely inappropriate, maybe even a bit sickening. Thank God none of this is canon. Oh yeah, and there's also how Strange New Worlds kind of ignored everything we just talked about and decided to retcon the dates of the eugenics wars, putting the original series canon status into question. I have an entire video about that. Link in the description as well. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up down below and don't forget to share it. That stuff really helps me out. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that as well so you won't miss future uploads, and click the bell icon to receive all notifications. If you want to support my work even further, you can become a patron at patreon.com/OrangeRiver, or become a YouTube member by clicking the join button on my channel page. By becoming a patron or member, you get access to awesome perks like behind the scenes photos and videos, patron and member only polls, name in the credits, merch discounts, and more. Or you can just drop a one-time super thanks or PayPal donation. All are appreciated. Links to my PayPal as well as my social media and merch store are in the description. Don't forget to use my Raid Shadow Legends link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses for new players with an epic champion. That's all I have for this week. Live long and prosper.